Back in 2003, a group of actors shot a found footage movie at an abandoned mental hospital, and they were never seen again. Of course, it was all fake, but maybe that's just what they want you to think. Alex here is convinced that the footage is real, but when he and his friends set out to prove it, they end up crossing paths with some of the most terrifying demonic creatures that you could possibly imagine. And you aren't going to believe what they find in the end. We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you probably should do, and how to beat the demonic doctor in Grave Encounters 2. This documentary is about to turn into a horror film. It's Halloween night, and this film student Alex here is back at his dorm posting a review of the movie Grave Encounters. But little does he know that the real story is not over yet. One day he's looking at the responses to his reviews with his best friend Trevor when he notices something strange. Someone replied to one of his posts with a clip of the character Matt from the movie. But the weird thing is, they don't remember this scene, and the only clue that they have is the commenter's username, Death Awaits 6. Curious, they decide to message him and see what happens, but that was their biggest mistake. It takes another week before they reply again, but this time it's just a strange sequence of numbers. Later that afternoon, he figures out that they're actually the coordinates to the real-life location of the Collingwood Psychiatric Hospital, where Grave Encounters was filmed. Although they changed the name for the movie, the stories of what happened to the patients there were all true. And this leads Alex down a rabbit hole that he should never have opened up. The more that he looks into it, the more suspicious that it all becomes. None of the actors ever worked again, and the caretaker Kenny died right after it came out. Curious, he puts up another post asking for anyone with information about the film to come forward, but nothing could ever prepare him for what he's about to find. Okay, Alex here just forgot the most important rule of internet safety. Never respond to random strangers who send you unwanted DMs. He's convinced me that he's on the verge of a major breakthrough, but he needs to be careful what he's getting himself into. The truth is that these messages are extremely suspicious, and instead of just taking them at face value, it's time for him to start asking some important questions. First off, I'd want to know as much as possible about who Death Awaits 6 really is. I mean, the username suggests that they're a fan of the film, since it's obviously a reference to the words that Lance and the others found written on the front door. But the fact that they have access to unused footage suggests that it could actually be someone with close ties to the original production. Either way, the next question is, why did they choose him? Alex here can't even get the attention of the girls at his school, so what made him stand out compared to the hundreds of other fans who are all posting their reviews online? Either the message was totally random, or this stranger here has an interest in Alex personally, and if that's true, then he should be extremely concerned about what their motivations are. After all, he's a nerdy shut-in with absolutely no social skills, whose own best friend decided to publicly humiliate him the one time that he actually went to a party. Now, just based on that alone, I'd be suspicious that Death Awaits here is just some kind of elaborate prank thought up by his classmates to embarrass him even more. And if it's not, and the ghosts at the asylum are real, then is that really the kind of stuff that a guy in his fragile mental state should be getting involved with? He's much better off just leaving it alone and trying to get a girlfriend like Trevor says. But if he's determined to keep investigating, then the first thing that I would do is to try to learn more about who's sending these messages. Now, although he doesn't have much to work with, Alex should start by going to Death Awaits' profile and finding out when the account was created. If it was just created since he posted his review, then that's an automatic red flaggo. But if the account is older, then they might have other uploads or activity that could reveal more about who they are. I would also try searching the username on other websites like Reddit, because, you know Reddit, and horror or paranormal-themed message boards. There is a chance that other people online have encountered this user before, and they might have some useful information for us before we decide whether or not to trust Alex's new friend. 2 weeks later, he finally gets another message from Death Awaits, containing only a picture of the actor Sean, who played Lance Preston in the film, and a mysterious phone number. It belongs to the actor's mother, and interestingly enough, the old woman says that her son is still alive and well, even inviting the boys to come over and meet him for an interview. Arriving at the house, they sit down to ask the old lady some questions while they're waiting for Sean. Strangely, she tells the boys that they can go wait for him in the room upstairs, and as they're checking the place out, they notice that everything is covered in dust, as if no one has been there for years. All of a sudden, the woman's nurse shows up in the doorway, shouting at them to leave as she rushes them out the door. Once they're inside, she explains that the woman has dementia, and when it comes to Sean, they haven't seen or heard from him ever since the day that he left to film at the hospital. After his visit with the old woman, Alex here just can't seem to get the mystery off of his mind, and it's starting to affect his relationships with his friends. One night, he gets in a fight with his friend Jennifer for missing her play, but he insists that he's been working on something a lot more important. He has a whole conspiracy theory board taped to his bedroom wall, and he's traced every member of the original Grave Encounters crew back to a case file of missing persons reports, all dated on the same day back in 2003. Furious, the girl storms out of the room, and Trevor here tries telling him to chill out before it all goes too far, but in the end, this kid's going to realize that he should have taken his friend's advice. That night, he's recording another post for his YouTube channel when something bizarre happens. Suddenly, the camera glitches out as his face transforms into the image of a howling demon with an elongated mouth, just like the ones that terrorized the original crew. And when it finally returns to normal, his printer begins printing something out all on its own. It's a call sheet for a music video in LA, but the important thing is who owns the production company: Jerry Hartfield, the same producer of the original Grave Encounters. Catching a flight, he makes his way over to Hollywood and gets into the studio by pretending to be a worker on the production. Getting inside was easy enough, but the minute that he tries speaking to Jerry, they immediately realize that he doesn't belong there and throw his ass right back out. Frustrated, he goes back to his car, convinced that the guy must be hiding something, but to his surprise, Jerry quickly knocks on his window and agrees to meet at his office the next day. He has to sneak in a camera, but the footage that he gets makes the whole trip worth it because within minutes of sitting down, Jerry admits that the incident was real, and the original cast really went missing. When he first saw the footage, he thought about destroying it, but being on the verge of bankruptcy, he decided to release the film instead. The families all signed NDAs and took cash settlements to keep quiet, and as for the so-called directors, they're just a couple of interns who he sent out to do the press. When he gets back to campus, his friends are honestly mind-blown that he's made so much progress. Alex isn't ready to stop there. He's got another message from Death Awaits, who wants to meet them inside of the hospital itself, and after convincing his friends that it could be the cinematic opportunity of a lifetime, they eventually agree to tag along, with none of them realizing that it's the last movie that they're ever going to make. Okay, this is an absolutely terrible idea. Alex here is walking them straight into a death trap, and if his friends had any idea what they were about to get themselves into, then they'd stay right here on campus. Now, with that being said, nobody besides Alex even believes that the footage is real, but those police reports are not up for debate. It's officially been stated by the police that 4 people actually went missing there, and that's not something to take lightly. Whether it's spirits, squatters, a violent cult, or even somebody doing a Scooby-Doo plot, the police reports show that there's a very real and dangerous threat somewhere in that building. Even the structural damage alone could be enough to kill you, and that's why the easiest way to avoid ending up like Lance and the others is to just ignore the messages and stay the hell away from this hospital. Even though the danger here couldn't be any more obvious, it looks like these morons are going for it anyway, so they should at least come prepared. They're obviously going to have all of the expected ghost hunting gear, but what we want to focus on is survival equipment. Now, in the original footage, Lance and his crew ran into the most trouble when the hospital started shifting, and they couldn't find an exit. To account for this, they should get physical maps or blueprints of the building and mark all of the possible exits and any key points of interest. It won't match up exactly if the building starts to shift, but it's better to have some form of reference than absolutely nothing, and as they're going, they should be using chalk or spray paint to mark out their path. I mean, they might end up needing to make their own exit, so I'd bring actual construction tools like a sledgehammer, bolt cutters, and crowbars to break down any walls, doors, or windows that get in their way. I would even bring a climbing harness and some rope, just in case the only way out is from a window on one of the higher floors. We know that the ghosts only come out at night, so I'd equip everyone with their own portable UV lights as well. It's a long shot, but this could be a hidden weakness that the original crew never found out about. The last thing that they should do before going in is tell a trusted friend where they're going and when they expect to be back. That way, they'll know that help is coming if they get stuck, but there's another way that we can improve on this idea even more. Alex is part of an online community with literally hundreds of people who are all obsessed with the original footage, so before going inside, I'd drop the location online. He'll still be the first one to discover whatever's in there, but this would draw even more ghost hunters to the building who could help them escape if things go wrong, or at least come in handy as meat shields if all else fails. A few days later, Alex, Trevor, and Jennifer, along with their friends Tessa and Jared, hop in the van and make their way up to Canada, arriving at the actual hospital where Grave Encounters was filmed. They head past some do not enter signs and onto the property, but as soon as they find the building's main entrance, a security guard shows up and tells them to get the hell out of there. He tries confiscating the tapes when he realizes that they're filming, but Alex hits the gas and takes off, speeding away before the man can catch them. At the hotel, they wait until after dark before going back to try again, with his friends passing the time by getting absolutely hammered and making fun of the original film. While they're partying, Alex goes over all of the fancy equipment that they're bringing, but it's painfully obvious that he's the only one who's taking this seriously. Late that night when the group comes back for another try, the security guard is already posted at the front door. They accidentally make too much noise, almost getting themselves caught for a second time, but just when it looks like he's about to spot them, the man gets an important call and has to leave the area, giving them a free shot to get inside. Excited, they rush up to the front steps, where they find the words "Death Awaits" written on the door just like in the film, and cutting the lock, they begin making their way into the building with no idea that they've just crossed into the realm of their worst nightmares. The first thing that they notice is some police tape blocking the halls, and Alex points out that it wouldn't be there unless there really was an investigation. Just like the first time, they travel around the hallways, setting up night vision cameras and visiting all of the spots where the original crew was supposedly killed. Once they have everything in place, the five of them gather back into the main hall where Alex and Jennifer record their big dramatic intro, declaring that tonight they're going to prove if the spirits from the hospital are real and look for evidence to explain what really happened to the original crew all of those years back. But in just a matter of hours, they're going to realize that coming here was the worst decision of their lives. To start off the footage, Jennifer explains that they've come prepared for any of the building's tricks, with glow sticks to mark their path, a military-grade GPS, and they're each carrying air horns in case somebody gets lost. They think that it's all enough to prepare them for anything, but little does she know how wrong she really is. Their first stop is the room where the cameraman TC was killed by a ghost in a bathtub full of blood. Alex tries making contact with his spirit using a voice recorder, but as they were all expecting, he doesn't get any kind of response. They try again in the demonic writing room, where Jared puts on the thermal camera to check for cold spots. Just then, a mysterious fog appears all around Trevor, and Alex gets excited thinking that they've finally found something, but the smell reveals that it's just picking up his farts. Just before 3 a.m., they get to the tunnel where Sean, aka Lance, met his ultimate demise, and are disgusted to find the decaying body of a half-eaten rat lying on the floor. Shocked, they wonder what kind of animal might be responsible for this, but it won't be much longer before they all find out. Okay, these idiots are about to get themselves killed. Everyone except for Alex here is still treating this whole thing like it's a joke. While he's busy hamming it up for the cameras, he's forgetting to pay attention to what they're actually capturing on the cameras, and here's what I mean. In the original Grave Encounters, the cameras picked up signs of ghostly activity long before the actors themselves did, and the same thing is happening here again. In the bathtub room, the cameras picked up the sound of running water as soon as they were gone, and down in the tunnels, you could hear noises coming from the pipes the moment that Jared left. Now, obviously, none of these sounds have a logical explanation since the place has been abandoned for decades and the city would have shut off the water a long time ago. If they remember, the sound of running water is actually the calling card of the spirit who resides in the bathtub room. And after seeing what it did to TC back in the day, I definitely wouldn't want to risk encountering it again. Now, with that being said, one thing that the old team had that this team doesn't was someone watching the cameras at all times. Back then, they had Matt set up in the main hall with screens to watch all of the cameras at once. So this crew should have Jared and Tessa doing the same thing here. They could play back the footage every few minutes to watch for signs of ghostly activity, and then immediately sound the alarm if they see any. Plus, this strategy keeps someone close to the main door, like an anchor back to reality. And speaking of getting back to the front door, marking their path with glow sticks would be a great idea except for one problem. Lance's team found the door, but it still didn't help them because the hospital itself had shifted while the doors were closed. What they need to do is block any door that they pass through wide open, including the front door, so that the halls can't shift while they're out of sight. Or they could just take the doors off their hinges entirely because a door can't close if it no longer exists. Of course, leaving the front door open would attract the security guard if he passes by, but personally, I'd rather risk getting caught by him than ending up trapped in the ghost dimension for the rest of eternity. Somewhere far at the end of the tunnels, they find the room where they're supposed to be meeting Death Awaits, but now it looks like their friend is running late. Gathering around the table, they notice that it's covered in strange markings and realize that it's actually a hand-drawn spirit board. Seeing this as a great opportunity for some footage, Alex and Jennifer both place their hands on the planchette and begin asking the spirits to send them a message. But they're surprised when the piece actually begins to move on its own, and both of them swear that they aren't controlling it. Asking the spirit its name, it spells out Death Awaits, and Alex realizes that it was actually this spirit who brought them here. But when he asks what the spirit wants, it only replies that it wants them to film everything. All of a sudden, the tables and chairs are forcefully pulled away from the ground and slammed against the walls, causing Alex and his crew to all run for their lives. They manage to hide in one of the storage rooms, locking the door behind them and dragging a desk over to block it, but that's when something starts crashing against the other side and keeps slamming into the door until it's finally able to break through. They're surprised to find that it's just the security guard, but he immediately flips out and says that they need to leave right now. The man leads them all the way back to the front door, but just as they're about to escape the building, they hear a huge crash from somewhere upstairs. And convinced that it must be one of their friends, he tells them all to stay put while he goes to check it out. Suddenly, they hear a burst of gunfire from the next floor, and Alex immediately rushes up there to see what happened. There's no sign of the security guard anywhere besides his flashlight and a few empty casings, but while his friends are absolutely freaking out, Alex insists that they can't leave until they retrieve the cameras. Horrified, Jennifer and the others try their best to talk some sense into him, but he refuses to leave without their equipment, so they split up into groups to get it done as quickly as they can, not realizing that it's the last time that they'll ever see each other alive. On the top floor, Jared reaches the window room before the others, but as he's grabbing the camera, he sees the window slowly creaking open right behind his back. Terrified, he nervously calls out to his friends, but that's when he notices something off camera, and all of a sudden, the spirit attacks him with a burst of supernatural energy. That makes one down with 5 more to go. Hearing the crash, Tessa rushes into the room a moment later. Her radio isn't working either, but using the air horn, she's able to call the others, and when they see the footage of themselves, they can't believe their eyes. Grabbing their things, Alex leads the way as they start following the trail of glow sticks back up towards the entrance. But it isn't long before they run into some trouble. Up ahead, the trail just ends at a solid wall that definitely wasn't there before. They start desperately searching for another exit as the panic quickly begins to set in. Okay, and there you have it, folks. The moment that we all knew was coming. They're officially trapped in this building with no hope of escape, and the worst part is that they had every opportunity to make it out alive. Wow! After the security guard left them in the lobby, they had a clear shot to the front door while they were still in this version of reality. Plus, plenty of footage on the cameras that they already had on them. They could have easily just left and come back for the footage in the morning when the spirits were dormant again. but instead they decided to do the most idiotic thing of all and split up. At least Jared was smart enough to insist that they used the buddy system, but then he immediately ditched his buddy. In the original film, going alone to get the camera from the window room is exactly what got Matt captured by the spirits, and knowing this one simple fact could have saved Jared's life. But that doesn't mean that they should just give up. It's time for Alex to start using his knowledge of the original film to help the group. And in the movie, the spirits start off by attacking anyone who goes off on their own. From now on, everyone in the group should stay literally within arm's reach of each other at all times, and resist any urge to panic and run unless there's no other choice. In a moment, they're about to find a map, and Alex tells them that it's useless because of how the building shifts. But that's not entirely true. I mean, it won't match up perfectly, but they can use it to look for patterns, and from there they can start making a map of their own. Like, for example, it would be extremely useful to know a certain type of hallway leads to a staircase, and seeing what rooms are nearby will help you figure out where you are within the hospital. Trust me, I've played way too much Silent Hill to know that this makes sense. Patient rooms will always be in the heart of the buildings on the upper floors, while reception, security, and administrative rooms will all be located on the first floor near the main entrance. And keeping this in mind can help them get their bearings while they're systematically looking for a way out. In the meantime, they need to start preparing for long-term survival. The good news is that they are all college students with families, so it should only be a matter of days or even hours before someone is looking for them. Between Alex constantly posting updates to his YouTube channel, The Rental Van, and their last known cell phone pings, the police should be able to track them to the hospital fairly quickly. And if all else fails, then there's still a chance that outside help might be their key to escape. They just have to survive long enough for it to actually get there. The girls eventually find a map, but Alex has seen this movie before and he knows that it won't match up now that the hospital has started to change. After a while, they follow the exit signs all the way to the old child's ward, but it just leads them to another dead end where they find a small rocking horse moving by itself in the shadows at the back of the room. The toy stops just as Trevor reaches out to touch it, but when they turn around, they're horrified to see a ghostly little girl sitting on the edge of the bed. Speaking in an uncanny voice, she asks the camera crew if they want to play, until suddenly her entire face twists into a demonic scream, and the group sprints down another hallway as she levitates right behind them. Locking a door, they're able to hold the monster back, but Tessa is so afraid that she takes off running way ahead the rest of the group. The others chase after her, but when they turn the corner, the hallway that she just went down has been replaced by a solid wall, and there's no possible way for them to reach her on the other side. As for Tessa, she finds herself trapped in the same area where the psychic Houston Gray was killed, with terrifying noises coming from the shadows all around her. Accidentally dropping her flashlight, she eventually finds one of the cameras and starts using the night vision mode to find her way around, but just when it looks like the spirits are gone, all hell suddenly breaks loose. Every door in the hallway starts flying off its hinges, and Tessa falls to the ground as something grabs her by the ankle, screaming for help until the invisible force finally presses her against the floor and crushes her spine. That makes 2 down with 4 more to go. The others take shelter until the spirits finally move on and then go back to searching for another way out. Wandering through the halls, Alex notices strange jolts of electricity coming from one of the rooms, and looking inside, they find the security guard strapped to an old electroshock therapy machine. He quickly shuts it off as sparks fly all around them, desperately trying to save the man's life, but it's too late, and as they're trying to untie his restraints, the machine suddenly turns itself back on, painfully shocking the man to death right in front of them until his entire body bursts into flames. That makes 3 down with just 3 more to go. Running through the halls, they eventually stumble across a window that leads outside, and with only a little bit of work, they're easily able to get it open. It seems like their luck is finally starting to turn around, but just as as Trevor lets his guard down, a massive ghoul crashes straight through the glass and grabs him from behind. Fighting back, he pulls himself loose and follows the others as they race through the building with the giant creature still chasing after them. But somehow they're actually able to find the front door, and when the monster tries to follow them outside, it explodes into a giant cloud of spooky dust. Back outside, the survivors find Jared's body splattered on the hood of the security guard's car, but there's nothing that they can do to help him, and terrified of what might happen if they stick around, they immediately speed back to the hotel. Getting everything from their room, they get back on the elevator and press the button for the lobby, but strangely, the cleaning lady turns to stare them down with a bizarre look on her face. And when the doors open up again, they're horrified to find themselves right back in the tunnels below the hospital. Okay, now this right here is just unfucking fair. The spirits are just playing mind games with them at this point, but Alex and his friends, they can't give up yet, because that's exactly what the demons want them to do. They could take what just happened as proof that the hospital has control over them wherever they go, but I'd choose to look at the glass half full here and keep believing that it's possible to get outside if they can make it back to the front door. First, they have to find a way out of the tunnels, and based on the ending of the original film, you might think that that's impossible, but without giving away too much, that's not actually true. They can get back into the hospital itself, so they need to keep going until they can find an elevator shaft, a stairwell, or a vent where they can climb back up. If they ever need to take a break, at least one of them needs to stand guard at all times, because falling asleep is what got Sasha taken by the mist spirit that lives down here. Now, once they're back in the hospital, they'll still have to contend with the demonic patients and powerful unseen forces that's already killed two of their friends. But the approach for how to handle each type of spirit is very different. The monsters can be held back with physical barriers like doors, and if you manage to hide, then they'll eventually move on and leave you alone. In a desperate situation, they can also be fought with regular attacks, so everyone should immediately arm themselves with a pipe from the wall until they find a better weapon. The invisible entity is more difficult, but paying attention to patterns in its behavior might help them. For example, it attacked Tessa and Houston in the same hallway, so they definitely want to avoid that area. When it attacks, it waits until one of the other monsters makes them panic and separate, right? Before targeting whoever ends up lost by themselves. And that's yet another reason why they need to stick together at all times. Something worth pointing out is that the entity didn't kill them directly, but instead it used a powerful force to smash them against the floor, or in Jared's case, throw him out of a window. With that being said, they should obviously stay away from windows and other drops like staircases whenever they can. As they're exploring, they can take any padding that they find, whether it's from the walls of cells, mattresses, or furniture cushions, and gradually build themselves improvised suits of armor to help them withstand powerful impacts. Is it a little bit silly to be walking around the place looking like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man? Yes, but I'd rather be silly than dead. My motto for real life. Now, when it comes to finding their way back to the main door, the best strategy is to retrace their general steps, even if the path doesn't match up exactly due to shifts. First, they need to find the children's ward again, which is located on the ground floor, and from there, they went down the hallway and straight up the first flight of steps, eventually bringing them to a window where the giant ghoul attacked. Then it was straight down this hallway, past the graffiti and some construction materials, and through a room with rectangular windows and a red and white checkerboard floor, which finally led them back to the main door. If they manage to get outside again, then the first thing that I would do is ditch Alex. I mean, he's the one that's actually connected to all of this, so maybe the spirits are most interested in him and would leave the rest of them alone. Then I would sit my ass outside and refuse to enter another enclosed space until I saw the sun come up in the morning. Their only choice is to go back into the tunnels, and by now they're all starting to completely lose their grip on reality. All of a sudden, the pipes all around them start to burst with steam, filling the hallway with clouds and making it impossible for them to see. Trevor uses his thermal camera to find the others, but as he looks down the hall, he notices another warm body rushing towards them, and it turns out to be a ratty-looking man. Whoever this is, it looks like he's been living down there for a long time, and shouting for the others to follow him, he leads the way to a nearby air vent, telling them all to climb inside. As they follow him through, Trevor gets his foot stuck on a piece of metal, and suddenly, the demon from the child's ward starts crawling after him, but he's able to get free just in time. The group find themselves in their new friend's secret lair, and now that they've finally gotten a good look at him, they realize that it's none other than Sean and Lance Preston himself, who's been surviving off of nothing but dirty water and rats this entire time. It's obvious that he's completely lost his mind, but Alex knows that he's probably their best chance at getting out of there, and that's when he notices a strange drawing of a red door on the wall. Leading the way, Lance brings them straight to the real thing, a bizarre freestanding red door in the middle of a large empty room. Oh, it's chained shut, and as they can clearly see, it doesn't lead anywhere, but it's the only door in the entire building that he hasn't been through yet, and the students here have the bolt cutters needed to get it open. There's just one problem. They lost the bag when Trevor was attacked by the giant ghoul, but Lance here says that he knows the building well enough to find it. Back at his hideout, Lance shows them his own map that he's been making, accounting for the shifting hallways with patterns that he's noticed over time. Pointing out one section in particular, he explains that it's the room where Dr. Friedkin's spirit resides, saying how they need to avoid it at all costs. It turns out that the doctor had been experimenting with the occult, opening up a gateway to the other side that allowed the evil spirits to come through, and now he's convinced that the only way back to their own reality is by getting through the red door. With Lance taking the lead, the others reluctantly follow him through the halls until they come to a storage closet. Thinking that it's a dead end, they start looking for another way around, but on the third time that he opens the door, they're shocked to discover a hallway on the other side. A bit farther up ahead, they hear one of the spirits headed their way and quickly decide to hide out in a nearby bathroom. Checking his map, Lance stands there quietly for a moment before suddenly using his metal pipe to bash a hole straight through the wall, and hearing the monster coming, Trevor panics and jumps inside, but he ends up falling straight through the ceiling onto the floor of another hallway. He finds the bag with the bolt cutters lying exactly where he left it, but the window leading outside has been replaced by a solid brick wall. Climbing down behind him, Lance grabs the tools and leads them to another room, saying how they'll go back for the door after they all get some rest. Exhausted, everyone lies down and quickly falls asleep, but while they're unconscious, one of the cameras floats out of the bag and starts to record them. The sound of it falling back down wakes Trevor up, and feeling worried, he decides to go off alone and record a goodbye message to his family, just in case he doesn't make it. All of a sudden, he hears a loud noise from somewhere in the darkness and turns on the camera's night vision mode to see who's there. But just then, Lance appears in the doorway, and before he even knows what's coming, the man lunges forward and smacks him across the skull with his metal pipe, choking him to death as he keeps repeating the words, "He made me do it." That makes 4 down, with 3 more to go. Okay, poor Trevor, man. The guy was just trying to help his nerdy friend fulfill his dreams, but little did he know that it would turn out to be their worst nightmare. The truth is that they'd never even be in this position if all 3 of them hadn't made one idiotic decision after another. But now that 60% of the friend group is dead, with the other 40 soon to follow, there's only one thing left to say. Alex and friends, you all f***ed up. Let's not forget how this whole thing started. You wanted proof that the footage was real, but if you actually believed that it was, then do I even need to explain why choosing to intentionally go there was the dumbest thing that you could possibly do? Like, if somebody showed me footage from a real haunted building, I'd say, thank you for telling me exactly where not to go. But you rounded up 4 of your friends like a 5-for-1 combo and led them all right in there like lambs to the slaughter. No wonder you weren't very popular with the ladies if this is how you like to spend your free time, getting murked. The messages were fishy from the beginning because death awaits, scheduled to meet you around 3 a.m. But if you remember from watching the original film, the start of the incidents that marked the point of no return began at around 2 a.m., an hour earlier. He also lured you as deep into the hospital as possible when a much more practical meetup point would have been the main hall by the front door. From any rational person's perspective, this was obviously a trap, but you were so caught up with making this documentary that you completely ignored the obvious red flags. Now, you'd think that after encountering a guy who'd survived here for 9 years, you'd start taking some notes, but Nope, he's walking around with a pipe to defend himself, while you're walking around completely unarmed. He sleeps in the corners of rooms when it's time to rest, but you all lay right out in the middle like a bunch of idiots. You might have wanted to at least pay attention to what he was doing, but instead you let him hold the f***ing bolt cutters that were the key to your salvation. And what do you know? The insane sewer man who bites the head off of rats and drinks raw toilet water betrayed you. Who could have seen that one coming? Now the guy is working for the demons, and he's willing to kill every one of you if that's what it takes to survive. And that's why Alex and friends, you all f***ed up. By the time that the others finally wake up, they're horrified to discover that another one of their friends has been killed, but Lance made one critical mistake. He forgot the map, and now their only hope of survival is to make it to the door before he does. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the building, the spirits are leading Lance here through the halls, and he starts slipping back into his old personality again, more and more with every step. Finally, they bring him back to the red door where he uses the bolt cutters to cut the chain, but when he pulls the door open and steps through the other side, nothing happens. Panicking, the man rushes through the doorway again and again, but it's no use, and breaking down, he runs back to the writing room, begging the spirit to tell him why it didn't work. Seconds later, the spirit replies that it wants him to bring the others, commanding him to collect the tapes and finish the film before it will set him free. Following the map, Alex and Jennifer eventually find their way to the surgical ward. He remembers that Lance told them to stay far away from that area, but it doesn't look like there's any other way for them to go. Inside, they find the place covered with occult symbols and photographs of bizarre experiments, but before they have a chance to get out of there, the lights suddenly come on as they see a group of demonic nurses enter the room. Terrified, they quickly take cover in a nearby locker as the evil Dr. Friedkin himself appears and sticks a metal spike straight through the patient's eye. Shocked, Jennifer lets out an involuntary gasp that gives away their hiding place, and a second later, one of the nurses pops up directly in front of them, forcing them to run with no idea where they're even going. In a panic, they run into a closet and slam the door shut behind them, but when they look back up from the map, they've somehow been transported back to the room with the red door. Seeing that it's open, Alex assumes that they must be too late, but that's when they hear Lance cackling at them from the shadows. Explaining that only one of them gets to leave, he starts demanding that they hand over the tapes so that he can finish the film. But Alex refuses to give up after coming this far, and the two of them break out into a final brawl to the death. Alex puts up a good fight, but the years of surviving off of rat meat have made Lance here one tough customer, and he's about to kill the guy when Jennifer finally steps in and clubs him across the back of the head. Just then, a giant vortex appears in the wall, trying to drag all three of them in like a black hole. Grabbing the wall, Lance tries as hard as he can to hold on, but his strength eventually gives out, as he's dragged away into the void, never to be seen again. That makes 5 down with 2 survivors, but the story is not over yet. As Alex and Jennifer get back on their feet, he's overtaken by the sudden realization of how the spirit wants things to end. Taking the camera, he approaches his friend and tells the girl that only one of them can leave alive, before pulling it back and smashing the lens straight into her skull. Too stunned to fight back, she falls to the ground as Alex stands over her, bringing the camera down again and again until she finally goes quiet. Turning to the spirits, he promises to finish the film so that more people will see it and fall for the trap. And this time, when he opens the red door, he finds himself back in the California hills, as the gateway behind him suddenly crumbles into dust. That makes 6 down with only 1 survivor, and 1 year later, Alex teams up with the producer Jerry to officially make the film, promising the audience that what they're watching is definitely not real. But if there's one thing that we can all learn here, it's that if you think a place might be haunted, then just leave it the hell alone and don't try to find out. Grave Encounters 2. It's a pretty dope found footage movie, I'm not gonna lie. In fact, if this was the sequel to the original Blair Witch 2, or like if the sequel to the original Blair Witch 2 was anything like this one, then, you know, the timeline would have shifted for the better. But I gotta give it up to the crew for putting up together a good concept and executing it perfectly. But, Meat Shields, you have to let me know down in the comments what you would have done differently. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.